The night was colder than usual, and the city streets were busy with people who hurried past without noticing much around them. In the middle of the noise and bright lights, a young man named Daniel stood quietly, holding a small notebook in his hands. He had been waiting outside a theater for hours, hoping for a chance to meet the one person who had unknowingly kept him going through the darkest days of his life. That person was Keanu Reeves. Daniel was not like the others waiting in line, hoping for an autograph or a selfie. His reason was deeper. For years he had battled loneliness, rejection, and the kind of silent pain that made it hard to breathe. His father had left when he was a child, and his mother worked long hours just to keep food on the table. Daniel grew up feeling invisible, carrying a weight that no one seemed to notice. During the hardest nights, when he felt like giving up, he would watch interviews and films of Keanu. What struck him was not just the roles or the fame, but the kindness in Keanu's eyes. The way he spoke softly, the way he smiled with humility, gave Daniel a reason to believe that goodness still existed in the world. That evening outside the theater, Daniel whispered to himself, "Just one moment, just one chance to tell him how he saved me." His hands shook as he held the notebook, where he had written a letter filled with words he could never say out loud. Suddenly, the doors opened. The crowd cheered as Keanu walked out with his usual calm presence, dressed simply, almost blending with the people around him. Cameras flashed, voices shouted, and security guards tried to keep the crowd in order. Daniel felt his chest tighten. He wondered if he would even get close enough. He pushed forward, carefully, holding the notebook tightly. People screamed for attention. Some shoved their phones in front of Keanu's face, but Keanu did not rush. He looked at everyone with the same soft respect, pausing to smile, nod, or give a kind word. It was this humility that made Daniel's eyes fill with tears. And then it happened. Keanu's gaze fell on Daniel, who stood a little apart from the shouting crowd. Something in Daniel's expression must have spoken louder than the voices around them. Keanu gently stepped toward him, ignoring the calls from others. Daniel froze, his mouth dry, his heart racing. "Hey," Keanu said softly, with that gentle tone that felt like a friend's voice. "Are you all right?" The question broke something inside Daniel. He wanted to speak, but his throat refused. Trembling, he held out the notebook with both hands. Keanu accepted it without hesitation, his eyes showing real interest. "Is this for me?" he asked. Daniel nodded, unable to form words. The crowd grew louder, pushing for more, but Keanu did not turn away. Instead, he stepped aside with Daniel, giving him space as though they were the only two people on the street. He opened the notebook and began reading. As he read the first few lines, his expression shifted, softening, deepening. Daniel had written about his struggles, about nights when he thought he would not make it to see another morning, and about how Keanu's quiet strength had given him hope. "You don't know me," the letter said, "but your kindness saved my life more than once." Keanu closed the notebook gently and placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. "Thank you for sharing this with me," he said, his voice steady yet filled with emotion. "You matter. Your story matters. I'm honored you wrote this." Those words, simple as they were, hit Daniel like sunlight breaking through heavy clouds. For the first time in years, he felt truly seen. He could not stop the tears streaming down his face. Keanu did not shy away. Instead, he pulled Daniel into a brief, quiet embrace, not caring about the cameras or the impatient crowd. In that moment, Daniel realized something powerful. The man he had admired for so long was not just an actor, not just a star. He was a human being who carried humility and respect in every gesture. That embrace was not just comfort, it was a reminder that kindness could change a life. The crowd finally pressed forward, and Keanu had to move on. But before he left, he looked at Daniel once more and said, "Keep going. You're stronger than you think." Those words would echo in Daniel's heart long after the night ended. He stood frozen as Keanu disappeared into the distance, but something inside him had shifted forever. He no longer felt invisible. He no longer felt forgotten. This was just the beginning of a story that would grow into something much larger than he ever imagined. Daniel could not sleep that night. He lay awake in his small apartment, staring at the ceiling, replaying every second of his meeting with Keanu. The words, "You matter, your story matters," circled in his mind like a quiet song. For years he had convinced himself he was nothing, more than a shadow moving through the world, unnoticed and unwanted. Yet now, a man he deeply respected had looked him in the eyes and said those words with sincerity. But along with the comfort, came fear. Daniel asked himself, what if that was it? What if I never see him again? What if I go back to being invisible tomorrow? The thought tightened in his chest. It scared him because the warmth he felt could fade, and he might return to the cold emptiness that had followed him most of his life. The next morning, Daniel walked to his job at a small bookstore. It was quiet, with few customers, which left him with too much time to think. His coworker, Lena, noticed something different. In his eyes, she had worked beside him for months but rarely saw him smile. "You look lighter today," Lena said, stacking books on the shelf. Something happened. Daniel hesitated. He had always kept his personal life hidden, afraid of being judged or misunderstood. But this time he wanted to share. "I met Keanu Reeves," he whispered, almost as if speaking too loudly would break. The memory. Lena laughed softly. The actor. No way. He nodded, his eyes glistening. He read my letter. He told me I matter. Lena's smile faded into something gentler. She could see this was not just about meeting a celebrity. This was about something much deeper. That's beautiful, she said quietly. Maybe it's a sign. Daniel tilted his head. A sign. Maybe it's telling you to stop hiding. Lena replied, if his kindness could touch you, maybe yours can touch others too. Her words settled in his mind, but they also scared him. Daniel had never thought of himself as someone who could inspire anyone. He had always been the one needing help, not the one offering it. Days passed, and Daniel carried the notebook Keanu had kept. It felt like a piece of his heart was now with someone who understood, but something inside him also grew restless. He wanted to hold on to that moment, yet he felt a pull to do something with it, something beyond himself. One evening, as he left the bookstore, he noticed a boy sitting on the steps outside. The boy was maybe 12, his clothes torn, his face pale. He looked lost, holding a small backpack against his chest. Daniel felt the familiar weight of hesitation. For years he had walked past people, too trapped in his own pain to reach out. But then he remembered Keanu's words. Keep going. You're stronger than you think. He took a deep breath and walked toward the boy. Hey, he said softly, kneeling down to meet his eyes. Are you all right? The boy shook his head, tears filling his eyes. I don't have anywhere to go, he whispered. For a moment, Daniel froze. He was not sure what to do. But then something shifted inside him. He remembered how it felt when Keanu had noticed him, when someone finally saw his pain. You're not alone, Daniel said gently. Come inside, I'll get you some food. They went into the bookstore, where Daniel offered the boy a sandwich. From the staff kitchen, the boy ate quickly, as though he hadn't had a real meal in days. What's your name? Daniel asked. Liam, the boy whispered. Daniel smiled softly. I'm Daniel. It's okay, Liam, you're safe here. Asterisk. As he sat with Liam, watching him eat, Daniel realized something powerful. Maybe Keanu had not just changed his life. Maybe Keanu had planted a seed, one that could grow into something larger, something that allowed Daniel to pass on the same kindness he had received. Later that night, as Daniel walked Liam to a local shelter where he could stay, he felt a strange strength inside him. It was not loud or dramatic. It was quiet, steady, like a flame refusing to die out. He looked up at the stars and whispered, thank you, not just to Keanu but to life itself, for giving him a moment that reminded him he was still capable of love and compassion. But Daniel did not know that this was only the beginning. What started with a notebook and a single meeting was about to turn into something much larger than he could have imagined, something that would test his strength, challenge his fears, and connect him to Keanu again in a way that would shock them both. Daniel's single quotes as days slowly began to change after meeting Liam. The memory of Keanu's words stayed alive in his heart, but now they were no longer just for him, they were guiding him toward others. He felt a responsibility he had never known before, a quiet call to reach out in ways he once believed. ECOULDN, single quotes T. Every afternoon after work, Daniel stopped by the shelter to see Liam. Sometimes they shared meals, sometimes they just talked. Liam had a nervous smile, the kind that came from years of feeling unwanted. But slowly, in Daniel's company, that smile became steadier. One evening, as they sat on the steps outside the shelter, Liam looked at him and asked, why are you helping me? Daniel thought for a long moment. His throat tightened. Because once, someone helped me when I felt invisible, he finally said, and it changed everything. Liam tilted his head. Who? Daniel's lips curved into the softest smile. Keanu Reeves. Liam laughed, a sound that was rare from him. The movie guy? Not just a movie guy, Daniel said. He's someone who sees people, and because he saw me, I'm learning to see others too. The boy's laughter turned into silence, and his eyes softened. Thank you, he whispered. Those two words struck Daniel deeply. They were small, but they reminded him of the first time he had felt seen. But while Daniel's life began to bloom with this new purpose, shadows from his past were never far away. One rainy night, as he left the bookstore, he found himself face to face with a group of old classmates he had once avoided. They had been the kind of people who mocked him, relentlessly, who whispered behind his back about his loneliness. Look who it is, one of them sneered. Still working in a bookstore? Figures. Their laughter echoed in the wet street. Daniel's chest tightened, old wounds reopening. Part of him wanted to run, to shrink back into silence. But another part remembered Keanu's steady eyes, remembered how it felt when someone chose kindness over cruelty. Daniel took a deep breath and stood taller. Yeah, I work at a bookstore, he said calmly, and I help kids who need a friend. What about you? The group fell quiet, caught off guard. There was no anger in his voice, only truth. For the first time, Daniel did not feel like the weak one. He felt steady, grounded. He walked away, his heart pounding, but strong. When he reached the shelter, Liam was waiting by the door. You look upset, Liam said softly. Daniel knelt in front of him and forced a smile. I'm okay. Sometimes, people try to make you feel small. But remember this, your value doesn't come from their words. It comes from who you are. Liam nodded, his eyes wide. Like what you told me before, that I matter. Daniel swallowed hard, realizing the cycle was repeating. The same hope Keanu had given him was now being passed down. But fate had another twist waiting. A few weeks later, the bookstore announced that Keanu's team had chosen it for a small local signing event. The manager nearly fainted from excitement. When Daniel heard the news, his breath caught. He had never expected to see Keanu again, let alone in the place where his new life had quietly begun. The day of the event arrived, the store filled with people, cameras, and buzzing energy. Daniel tried to keep calm as he helped arrange the books and guide customers. But inside, his heart raced. Then he saw him. Keanu walked in with his calm presence, smiling gently at everyone, dressed simply as always. For a moment, the world around Daniel blurred, and all he could hear was the sound of his own heartbeat. As the signing began, Daniel stayed in the background, not wanting to push himself forward. But then, something unexpected happened. Keanu glanced across the room and paused, his eyes locked on Daniel, recognition flickering. The crowd continued, unaware, but Keanu's gaze lingered, and in that moment, Daniel knew. Keanu remembered him. This was not just chance. It was the beginning of something bigger, something that would tie their lives together in ways neither of them could have predicted. The bookstore was louder than it had ever been. Laughter, whispers, and the rustle of pages filled the air as fans lined up to meet Keanu. Yet for Daniel, everything felt strangely silent. His eyes stayed locked on Keanu's gentle gaze. The recognition that passed between them too powerful to ignore. Daniel tried to keep working, arranging books and guiding customers, but his hands trembled. He had prepared himself for the possibility of never seeing Keanu again. Now he was here, in the same place, looking at him as if the night outside the theater had never been forgotten. Minutes stretched like hours. Finally, near the end of the signing, when the line had thinned, Keanu quietly stepped away from the table. His security tried to guide him back, but Keanu shook his head and walked toward Daniel. The crowd murmured in surprise. Phones lifted, but Keanu ignored them. "Hey," Keanu said softly, stopping just a few feet away. His voice was the same as Daniel remembered, steady, humble, full of warmth. "I remember you." Daniel's throat tightened. He wanted to speak, but words tangled inside him. "You gave me something once," Keanu continued. "A notebook. I still have it." Daniel's knees almost buckled. He could not believe it. You kept it," he whispered. Keanu nodded gently. "Of course, your words mattered." The crowd stared, confused, trying to piece together what was happening. But for Daniel, the noise faded. He felt as if the world had narrowed to just the two of them, the same way it had on that night months ago. Then, as if fate had planned it, Liam appeared at the doorway of the bookstore. He had come after school, holding a worn backpack, his eyes lighting up when he saw Daniel. "Hi," he called softly, though the noise of the crowd nearly drowned him out. Keanu glanced toward the boy and smiled. "Is he your brother?" Daniel shook his head. "No, he's someone I'm trying to help, the way you helped me." Something flickered in Keanu's eyes, something between pride and quiet respect. He bent down slightly to wave at Liam. "Hi there," he said warmly. Liam froze, his mouth falling open. You're Keanu Reeves." The crowd laughed gently at the boy's honesty, but Keanu only smiled, walking closer to meet him at eye level. "And who are you?" Liam's voice trembled. "I'm Liam." "Nice to meet you, Liam," Keanu said, offering his hand. Liam shook it with awe, his face glowing with the happiness Daniel had never seen before. As this small exchange unfolded, Daniel realized something. This was bigger than just a fan meeting a star. This was about kindness flowing like a chain. Keanu to him, and him to Liam. And now, Liam was experiencing that same light firsthand. But just as the moment seemed perfect, a sudden voice rose from the crowd. "This is all staged, isn't it?" A man shouted, his tone sharp. "You're just making stories to get attention, actors pretending to care. None of this is real." The words cut through the air like glass shattering. The crowd turned, some nodding in doubt, others frowning at the outburst. Liam's smile faded, his shoulders sinking. Daniel felt his chest tighten, old wounds of being mocked and dismissed rushing back. He wanted to defend himself, to fight against the cruel words, but before he could, Keanu stepped forward. His voice was calm, steady, yet powerful enough to silence the room. "Kindness is always real," Keanu said. "You don't need cameras or proof for it to matter. One act of respect can change someone's life. I know because it changed mine, and it changed his too." He gestured softly toward Daniel. "And now, it's changing Liam's." The room fell quiet. The man who had shouted lowered his gaze, unable to respond. The crowd softened, many of them wiping away tears. Daniel's single quote's eyes burned, his chest heavy with emotion. In that moment, he realized Keanu was not just defending himself. He was defending all of them, the invisible, the overlooked, the ones who had been told their feelings were not real. Keanu turned back to Daniel and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Never let anyone take away the truth of your story," he said gently. Daniel nodded, unable to speak. Liam, still wide-eyed, leaned closer to him and whispered, "He stood up for you, for us." And Daniel knew this was no longer just a meeting. This was the beginning of a deeper bond, one that would tie their stories together in ways even more powerful than before. The bookstore returned to silence after the event, but the weight of what had happened lingered inside Daniel's chest. He replayed Keanu's words over and over. Never let anyone take away the truth of your story. Those words were like armor, protecting him from the doubts that once crushed him. Liam, still glowing from shaking Keanu's hand, could not stop talking about it. He talked to me like I was important, Liam said, his voice bright with awe. He didn't treat me like I was just some kid from the street. Daniel smiled, but he also felt something deeper. He remembered how he himself had once been that lost, unseen person. Now he was watching Liam experience the same healing light. It was like witnessing a mirror of his own journey, but this time, he was not the one being saved. He was helping someone else rise, yet shadows often follow moments of light. A week later, the bookstore owner called Daniel into the office. Her tone was hesitant, almost apologetic. Daniel, some people complained after the signing, she said. They think you staged that whole thing with Keanu to get attention. For yourself? The words stung like fire. Daniel shook his head quickly. No, I didn't. I never asked for any of this. I know, she said softly, but people talk. And the store has been getting emails. Some even say we invited Liam as part of some act. Daniel's chest tightened. Liam was just a boy who needed a safe place, and now strangers were twisting his presence into something ugly. That's not fair, he whispered. I believe you, the owner said gently. But I need you to stay quiet about it. Don't fuel the gossip. Let it pass. Daniel nodded, though inside he felt the old ache returning, the ache of being misunderstood, of being judged without anyone knowing the truth. That night, he walked Liam back to the shelter. The boy noticed his silence. Are people being mean to you? Liam asked softly. Daniel forced a smile. Don't worry about me. But Liam shook his head. I do worry. You told me my story matters. Doesn't yours matter too? Daniel froze at the words. It was as though Liam had thrown his own lesson back at him. He realized he was still learning how to believe his story had value. That as days passed, whispers grew louder. Some on social media called him a liar. Some mocked him, saying he was using Keanu's kindness for his own gain. The pressure became heavier, and Daniel felt himself slipping into old thoughts, the dark ones that whispered he was worthless. One night, unable to sleep, he walked through the city. Streets, rain poured down, soaking his clothes. He ended up outside the theater where he had first met Keanu. He stood there trembling, remembering that night, remembering the notebook. Maybe they're right, he whispered to himself. Maybe I don't matter. Maybe I'm just pretending. But then his phone buzzed. A message appeared, an unknown number. Daniel, it's Keanu. I heard what's happening. Can we meet? Daniel's breath caught. His hands shook as he read the words again and again. It didn't feel real. But the next morning, he found himself waiting nervously at a small cafe downtown. The door opened and Keanu walked in, wearing a simple jacket, blending with the quiet crowd. He smiled when he saw Daniel and sat down across from him. Been hearing the noise? Keanu said gently. People doubting you, saying cruel things? Daniel's eyes burned with unshed tears. They think I made it all up. They think I'm using you. Keanu leaned forward, his expression calm but firm. Daniel, truth doesn't need their permission. What happened between us was real. I kept your notebook because your words were real. Liam is real, and the kindness you've shown him is real. Daniel's lips trembled, but it hurts. It feels like the more I try to be honest, the more people try to tear me down. Keanu's gaze softened. I know that feeling. People will always try to twist stories. But here's what I've learned. You can't let their doubts define your reality. Kindness is stronger than their noise. And when you choose to keep showing it, even when it hurts, you win. Those words struck Daniel deeper than anything before. Keanu wasn't just encouraging him, he was sharing a truth carved from his own life. But as Daniel began to feel hope again, a sudden shadow appeared at the cafe window. A man with a camera, pointing directly at them, snapping photo after photo. Keanu sighed softly. It seems the story isn't finished yet. Daniel's stomach sank. He realized that what came next might not just test his strength, but also put Liam in the center of attention in ways he wasn't ready for. The photos spread quickly. By the next morning, images of Daniel and Keanu sitting together at the cafe appeared online, shared by blogs and gossip sites. Headlines twisted the moment, some calling Daniel a desperate fan chasing fame, others accusing Keanu of getting too personal with strangers. Daniel felt the weight of the world pressing down again. He had only wanted to live quietly, to carry the gift of kindness Keanu had given him, and pass it forward. But now, it felt like everything was being stolen: his dignity, his peace, even Liam's safety. He walked to the shelter that evening and found Liam huddled in the corner, holding his backpack tightly. People were talking about me today, Liam whispered. They said I only met Keanu because of you. They said I was lying too. Daniel knelt beside him, his heart breaking. Liam, listen to me, he said softly. None of that matters. What's real is you, me, and the kindness we've shared. Nobody can take that away. Liam's eyes filled with tears. But it hurts. Daniel pulled him close. I know. It hurt me too. But we'll face it together. The next day, something unexpected happened. The bookstore announced that Keanu himself had requested to hold a private talk there, not for cameras, not for publicity, but for the community. Word spread, and soon the store was filled again, not with flashing lights and gossip, but with quiet anticipation. Daniel stood nervously at the back with Liam, unsure what was about to happen. Then Keanu walked in. Simple as always, no grand entrance, no spotlight. He stood in the center of the room, looking around at the faces waiting for him. There's been a lot of noise lately, Keanu began, his voice calm, steady, people saying what's real and what's not. But I want to tell you something: kindness doesn't need proof. It doesn't need to be staged. It lives in moments, small ones, between people who choose to care. The room was silent. Keanu turned his gaze to Daniel. Months ago I met someone outside a theater. He gave me a notebook filled with his story. His words reminded me why it's important to keep showing kindness, even when the world feels heavy. His name is Daniel. The crowd turned toward him. Daniel's throat closed, his hands shaking. Keanu continued. Daniel didn't ask for attention. He didn't plan this. He simply chose to keep kindness alive, and, because of that, he changed someone else's life too. He gestured toward Liam, this young boy. Liam froze, eyes wide, but Keanu knelt down to meet him at eye level. Liam, you matter. You're not invisible, and don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise. The boy's lips trembled. Thank you, he whispered, his voice breaking. The crowd grew still, many people wiping their eyes. In that moment, all the doubt and gossip seemed to melt away, replaced by something stronger, the undeniable truth of what kindness could do. Daniel felt tears stream down his face. Never in his life had he imagined standing in a moment like this. The boy he had once saved from despair was now being lifted by the same man who had once lifted him. It was like a circle of light, flowing from one soul to another, unbroken. After the talk ended, people approached Daniel quietly, not with judgment, but with respect. Some whispered words of encouragement, others simply nodded with gentle smiles. The storm of doubt was beginning to fade. Later, as the crowd cleared, Keanu walked over and placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. You see now, he said softly, this isn't about fame or stories, it's about how you live. You've already changed lives. Daniel, don't ever doubt that again. Daniel's voice cracked. I don't know how to thank you. Keanu smiled, the same warm smile that had once saved him. Live your life with kindness. That's thanks enough. Outside the bookstore, the evening sky glowed with the last light of the sun. Liam held Daniel's hand tightly, no longer afraid, no longer alone. And for the first time in his life, Daniel felt whole. He was no longer invisible. He was part of something greater, something unshakable, because one man's humility had lit a spark, and that spark had grown into a fire that would never fade.